Who is the most important player for Tennessee on both offense and defense? Yeah, we've had this conversation before, but we're going to reset it as camp is just a couple weeks away. Not the best player, the most important player for the Volunteers on offense and defense. That and a whole lot more. It's your Wednesday Locked On Vols.
You are Locked On Vols, your daily podcast on the Tennessee Volunteers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, good Wednesday morning, everybody. Welcome into Locked On Vols. I am Eric Kane. Appreciate you guys for being here. You everydayers, making Locked On Vols your first listen, your first watch each and every single day. You guys know the drill. Locked On Vols YouTube channel. Please subscribe. Let's get in front of more and more Tennessee fans. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, literally wherever you can find your podcast, we are there. We are absolutely free. You can watch us, listen to us, subscribe to us though, and download us on those audio platforms if you wouldn't care. That is how we get this show in front of more and more Tennessee fans, and it's how the show grows. We got a fun show coming up today. Most important Vol on offense, defense, and special teams. Ward Wednesday. Josh Ward. A lot of conversation with him in segment 2, an extended little version of Ward Wednesday because we didn't get to catch up last week after the national championship. Tennessee baseball got its first portal commit, which is exciting. And then the SEC Takeover. What's that schedule look like for Friday for the University of Tennessee? All that and more coming up here on a Wednesday show. Couldn't do it without our friends over at Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Before I get into it, there was a question on yesterday's mailbag show, and it was a YouTube question, and I don't have the handle in front of me. I didn't really understand the question, talking about some strike zone or whatever on the broadcast. I'm like, well, they have balls and strikes listed on the broadcast. My guy Smokey D. Luffy on Twitter said, brother, it is, in a nice way. He's a good dude. But he said, brother, it is the box. The box. Why don't they do the box? And I'm like, oh, that makes so much sense. Couldn't tell you. Have no clue. Something to do with technology, I guess. But yeah, that makes a whole lot more sense now. So I see where you're coming from with the question. I felt so dumb whenever he said, I'm like, oh, well, yeah, that makes sense. I feel stupid now. Nonetheless, just another day here on Locked On Vols with Kaner, right? Let's get into it. Most important player on each side of the football. Now, for full transparency, I am going to remove the studs on both sides of the football because, yes, they are the best players on both sides of the football, but it's kind of common sense, right? I mean, Nico Iamaleava, the quarterback, we have seen, look across the landscape, especially in this era of college football. In the past, when you build your paradise on defense and running the football, and you weren't spread out and doubles and trips to one side, nub to one side, open, you could get by with a guy that was a game manager. That's just not the game anymore. So we saw in 2022, quarterback made a go. I mean, there was a lot of good players, but quarterback made a go in Hendon Hooker. We saw in 2023, quarterback play, and it wasn't all his fault. I'm not trying to say it was, but you saw a dip in the production for Tennessee's offense. So Nico, who I think is the best offensive player, I also think he's the most important because a quarterback just means that much for your system. I'm going to remove him from the conversation. And the same with James Pearce on the other side of the football, simply because he's obviously the best player. He's an impact player. And when he's on the field, the offensive line, the offense has to game plan how they're going to block him. And so obviously that impacts how Tennessee's other side of the defensive line is going to be blocked, and hopefully it'll open some things up and they get in there and make some sacks. A la, Tyler Barron last year. In the interior, you had homeboy Norman Lott that got back there a little bit. So I'm going to remove those two guys from the conversation. Offensively, we've had this conversation before, but I'm going to stick to my guns. It is Cooper Mays. And not just because Cooper Mays is getting, All-American honors from Walter Camp and All-American honors from, whether it was Lindy's or whether it was Phil Steele or whether it was, whatever it is. Cooper Mays having a pretty good, summer in terms of being on all these lists. And it doesn't matter. I mean, it doesn't matter at the end of the day. These aren't the All-Americans that matter. And these players will say they don't really care about that. They just want to go win some ball games. But Cooper Mays is a veteran in this league. But more importantly, he's a veteran in this system. Go back and look at the offensive production when Jerome Carvin, who is a guard and a good guard at that respect, had to slide down and play center. The offense was not as quick as it needed to be. It was not as efficient as it needed to be because you had a guard snapping the football. Ollie Lane, when he was playing center for the first little month or so of the season last year, or Dane Davis, the offense was fine, but it was not where it needed to be because you had Ollie Lane, who was your starting guard, or Dane Davis, who is, a tackle or a guard or whatever they needed him to be on that day. Cooper Mays makes this thing go. It sets the pace of the no-huddle offense, the tempo. Sure, the receivers have to sprint back and get in line. The quarterback's got to make it all go. But, the tempo starts first and foremost with the center. And most importantly, Cooper Mays has been playing games and starting games in this league since 2020. He started a couple of games for Brandon Kennedy during that COVID-shortened 2020 season, if you remember. One game specifically, I know for a fact. But he's played a whole lot of football. He has seen a whole lot of football around this league. He's been in environments. He's dealt with crowd noise. He's blocked big 300 plus pounders on a nose or a shade. He's gotten to the linebacker. He's gotten to the one technique. He's quick. He's strong. He's agile. Cooper Mays is so important for Tennessee's offense, and there's no way around it. I think the tight end position is so important for this offense as well, but I don't know enough about Holden Stays and Ethan Davis right now to say that they're going to be the most important, but I do know about Cooper Mays. So Cooper Mays, if we take Nico Iamaleava out of the conversation, the quarterback, Cooper Mays is the most important player for Tennessee offensively. Let's go to defense. I'll ask Josh here this here in a moment as well, but what I didn't get to say over the course of our conversation, we're taking James Pearce out of the conversation here. Keenan Pili last year did not play linebacker outside of the opening game. And Aaron Beasley had to do a little bit of everything, had to play both inside spots. He was hurt. Clearly, he was not 100%. He was playing way too many snaps. You took Keenan Pili off the field, and that linebacker group was not very good. I'm not saying that it would have been a super, super great group. Super, super great group. If Keenan Pili, played his normal snaps last year. But that linebacker group was not good last year. It just wasn't. And I think a lot of it had to do with having to force feed these young freshmen. I'm glad they played, but having to force feed these young freshmen. Elijah Herring, had to get a whole lot of playing time, and he had his limitations certainly. But getting Keenan Pili back in the fold is just a calming presence, a guy that's played tons of football, was originally a part of the 2016 recruiting class for BYU, and of course he went on his 2-year mission, and he had the COVID year, he had a redshirt year, and it's just kind of the nature of the beast right now. You could be in college for about a decade, and that's where we are with Keenan Pili and John Campbell, it feels like. But nonetheless, I think Keenan Pili is so very important for Tennessee's defense, moving forward. I think Keenan Pili, put him out there with a Jeremiah Thielen, put him out there with an Arian Carter, put him out there with a Caleb Perry, put him out there with an Edwin Spillman, put him out there with a Jalen Smith, whoever the case is, as long as Keenan Pili's out there quarterbacking that defense and making the calls and the checks from the mic position, feel like you're in a pretty good spot. So we saw a lot of the time how the defense and not necessarily the defense as a whole, but the linebackers struggled without that presence on the field last year. And so I would say that Keenan Pili is the most important player for Tennessee on defense outside, of course, James Pearce. So we have some caveats. No Nico Iamaleava, no James Pearce, but I'll say Cooper Mays and Keenan Pili, two of the most important players on this football team. Good, gifted, you like what they bring to the table, but also just where they are and what they mean to the systems. So very important in my opinion. We'll get into a conversation with Josh Ward. That is coming up next. And, of course, we'll talk a little Tennessee baseball and the transfer portal and SEC takeover to conclude the show coming up in segment number 3. All that and more as we continue on here with the Wednesday Locked On Vols. I want to say about our friends over at Game Time. Download this Game Time app, create an account, put in the promo code Locked On College. You're going to get $20 off your first purchase. Again, Locked On College is the promo code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off your first purchase. What is Game Time? Well, it's an app that you can buy tickets for. Yeah, sporting events, football, basketball, baseball, whatever's going on your University of Tennessee of choice, but also concerts at Thompson Bowling Arena, the Food City Center, monster truck rallies, the Bijou Theater downtown, the Tennessee Theater, comedy shows, whatever sport, whatever event, entertainment event, there we go, is in your area. You can probably find those tickets on the Game Time app, and they got great things to take advantage of over there. They got flash deals, they got zone deals, they got all-in prices, you got seat views, so you know exactly what you're paying for. But the best part about it is they have the lowest price guarantee, which Game Time is going to credit you 110% of the difference if you find that ticket somewhere else cheaper in the same section. Download the Game Time app today, put in that promo code Locked On College, and you're going to get $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today, last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. A little segment we like to call Ward Wednesday here on Locked On Vols. Josh Ward, 99.1 The Sports Animal, co-host of Josh and Swain with EFL Jason Swain, noon to 3 on The Sports Animal. Josh, we have not spoken here on this platform since Tennessee has a national championship. Tennessee baseball, it's a week later, but it still kind of feels like surreal a little bit that a Tennessee team has won a national championship. Your thoughts on Tony Vitello's baseball squad?
More than a week has passed, but the joy is still in the air. Tennessee fans love Tony Vitello. They have fallen in love with the program over the last few years, and this year's team, which did not have a lot of national championship talk at the start of the season, other than, hey, they have a good chance to get back to Omaha, which means they would be in play. But the idea that they would win multiple SEC titles, be the number one overall seed, and then win the national championship is something that probably caught a lot of people off guard, that being in play. And then to complete it, knowing the drought that had existed and how much fun this team was for fans to watch and the drama that took place with some of the games, like the comeback win against Florida State, and then even holding off Texas A&M by one run in the finale where nerves started to come back into play. Seeing that parade was so cool. So, yeah, it's been more than a week, but we're going to be talking about this team and this national championship that Tennessee completed for a long time.
Yeah, I mean, I don't act like I know everything on the history of college baseball. I know you're not in that ballpark as well, no pun intended. But when you look at, what this team has done historically, and only the fourth team from the SEC ever to sweep the SEC regular season, conference tournament titles, and College World Series title. The first SEC team to ever win 60 games in a year. The most wins of any college program since FSU in 2002. The most wins by a national champion since Wichita State in 1989. I mean, this team, it's 3 away from tying the all-time home run record. First team ever to have 5 players hit 20-plus home runs. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. This team, coming into the year, as you mentioned, not a whole lot of, I think this team could win the national championship. But when it's all said and done, this team, the 2024 version of Tennessee Volunteers that had so many questions in terms of pitching all year long, might end up being the best team ever at this current standing. I mean, it's a hat tip to Tony Vitello and his staff. It's pretty remarkable that after all the surge and all the good play over the last couple of years, it ends here with the national championship.
Yeah, the team's accomplishments have to put them in the conversation with the best teams of all time, knowing the depth and the talent that exists in the SEC. For Tennessee to sweep the SEC championships, to almost be perfect in series victories, only losing the first SEC series of the season at Alabama and then winning the rest. And then to do what they did in the postseason, to be the number one overall seed, they were that. So they went in as the best team and they came out as the best team. And they really were a team. From game to game, we talked about different players stepping up in big spots. The historic Christian Moore performance in that Florida State comeback. The clutch hitting from Dylan Dreiling. The run that ended up being the difference by Hunter Inslee. They just kept making plays. And then a pitching staff that lost its Friday starter, who was probably going to be their best starter, in A.J. Russell, and figuring things out on Friday nights and then opening games of postseason series, and then finishing it off with Xander SEC. I think that's the appropriate way for Tennessee to finish the season, with him on the mound after the start of the season. Xander being a big question. Is he really going to be a starter all the way through? Can Tennessee really go to Omaha and compete for a championship with Sechrist as their Sunday guy? And he wasn't just a guy that helped fill out the starting rotation. He helped lead them toward the end of the season. And what their relievers were able to do late, it's an incredible story. Everybody deserves so much credit. The coaching staff, which is a huge part of it, the players who fit in with their personality and who picked each other up and made plays and came back from adversity. It's everything that you would write up if you're trying to create this story for Tennessee, which ended up being reality.
When you have a national championship winning ball club, I mean, there's so many different storylines you can point to throughout the season, and there's being so close to it. I mean, there's a million different storylines that I could talk about. I mean, Christian Moore, arguably one of the best seasons ever, by obviously a Tennessee player, but nationally as well. The emergence of Blake Burke, the rebounds, the way Hunter Rensley ran through a wall, had what ended up being the game-winning run on a bad wheel coming around from first base, and Josh Elander sent him home, and I don't know why he did that because looked like he was going to be out by a mile, but he found a way to score. But the guy you brought up right there, Xander SEC, man, he might be the best story of them all. A guy that was the midweek starter forever, right? And to be a midweek starter for Tony Vitello, it just means you're getting the ball for the first couple innings because he puts in about 10 pitchers a game on those Tuesdays. And it's so easy for players now to leave and go look for new opportunities, and he decided to stay around, and he got his opportunity. And even towards the beginning of the season, it wasn't guaranteed, and he got sent to the bullpen a little bit. He had a midweek start this year, but came back and started to open, and then turned into not only the third starter on this squad, but heading into postseason play, the best starter on this squad. That is probably my favorite storyline when it's all said and done. You came back and won the way you did in Game 2 with the Dylan Dowling home run, Cal Stark home run against A&M. Heading into Game 3, I mean, hindsight, I know it's easy to say this, but heading into Game 3, you had all the confidence in the world with Xander SEC on the mound that you were going to get that done.
Yeah, Tennessee felt really good because he was getting the ball going in and knew that the offense was capable of coming back out there and putting up runs and would build on the momentum from Game 2 with those late inning home runs that you mentioned. I think it was all storybook, and a lot of times I think that can be overstated, but with the Florida State comeback in Game 1 of the World Series, Eric, when they pulled that off, I really thought right there, Tennessee's going to win the national championship. And they obviously had to pull it off, and nothing was guaranteed. But they responded exactly like I thought they would in the next game against North Carolina, coming out and looking like they were just more comfortable from the very first pitch of the game, and then taking care of business in Game 3 of that bracket against FSU. They lost Game 1 against Texas A&M. It didn't really change my thoughts of what would happen in the series. I will admit, in the middle of Game 2, I thought, is this how it ends, where the bats go completely cold? But again, the story of, okay, nope, they're going to come alive again, and somebody's going to step up and get a hit. That's why Cal Stark said, we feel like we're an inning away. And I think the players really did believe that. That doesn't mean doubt didn't creep in at some point with some of those players in the dugout. That would be natural. But they just continued to rally. There are so many little things, individual defensive plays. The Florida State comeback includes moments where they knock the ball out of the catcher's hand at the plate, where Florida State has a runner coming around third where he should have scored when the ball pops off Kavaris Teer's arm or glove, but they had a base running issue there, so they didn't get the run. Tennessee got a run, and what's the difference in the end? A run. Hunter Rensley's his ability to avoid the tag, the epic slide, the helmet spike, which is now going to be an iconic moment for Tennessee fans to celebrate forever, ends up being the difference in the end, not knowing that at the time, but finding that out in the end. It's just, it all works out for Tennessee as it was supposed to.
Yeah, guy you continue to mention there, Cal Stark. It's a very good guy, right?
Always trust the Admiral to step up. And in this case, Cal Stark did that for Tennessee. Another
storyline, right? I mean, he's the last couple of years, he's obviously in the lineup because of his defensive play. 7 back picks, had to lead the nation. The dude doesn't hit singles. He walks, he hits home runs, he strikes out. But he was a huge storyline for Tennessee this year. Tony Vitello is about to get paid. I don't know if it's going to happen today. I don't know if it's going to happen tomorrow. He's not going anywhere. Danny White's going to take care of him. I think his assistants are going to get paid. I think Tennessee's baseball program is going to be rewarded as it should. And I think the deal was pretty much already done. But when you win a national championship, you go back to the drawing board and you say, hey, give me some more money here. And we all know who Tony Vitello's agent is, and it's one of the best in the business. And, as you should. You win a natty, go back and get more money, make more demands. But I wholeheartedly believe that within the next couple of days, maybe a week, but I would say sooner than later, Tony Vitello is going to be getting paid. It's going to be big news, in my opinion.
Yeah, the timing here is completely coincidental, but I went and looked at a couple because I wanted to make sure it was accurate. Those, the DNA testing you can do to look at your ancestry and find out who you're related to, and it turns out Tony Vitello is a cousin of mine, and I'm really excited to find that out and congratulate him on his new contract that he's getting. He deserves it. I think he deserves to be the highest paid coach in college baseball. Now, there's a lot that goes into this conversation. It's about Tony's compensation. It's about his coaching staff because he has some of the best assistant coaches in college baseball who have played a big role in the roster being what it is and the development. And you talk about Frank Anderson managing the pitching staff, losing Russell, losing the players they did from last year's team, and still having a top 5 ERA and guys getting it done the way they did in the postseason. What we just talked about with Xander, it's all incredible. But the success of the program over the last several years is at the top of college baseball. Now they have a national championship to go with it. There is no reason to think this is going to slow down in terms of Tennessee baseball continuing to compete at the very top. And when you think about 2017, the 2018 season, Tony Vitello's first as the head coach, where the program was and how quickly he elevated it to championship contention and then completing the job with multiple SEC titles and a national championship. I don't know if Tony Vitello is the best coach in college baseball. There are a few names that belong in the conversation, but he doesn't take a backseat to anybody. And it all can't be just about revenue to the athletic department. There is the marketing aspect that comes with the university. There is the impact on Knoxville. There are just other factors that I think go into this, plus everything that Danny White is talking about with what they want Tennessee athletics to be, not just Tennessee football, not just Tennessee basketball, but every part of Tennessee. So Tony Vitello deserves to be right up there at the top when it comes to the compensation he receives, because he's not going to slow down. He's not going to think, hey, we got a title and stop working harder. My guess is that he wants to win another one, and he's going to be driven to keep Tennessee where it is at the top of college baseball.
No doubt. Out the door, doing a little overtime here with you, but out the door, something spoke on in segment number 1. Let's shift gears here to football. Give me the most important player for Tennessee on each side of the football, offense, defense, and you want to throw the kicker in there as well, you can. Maybe not the best, but the most important. Maybe they're the same person. Who would you say that is, offense, defense?
Does Nico count on the offensive side, or is this a besides Nico?
It's a good point. Probably a besides the Nico, because, quarterback, you got to have one. So let's take Nico out of the conversation.
So my answer on offense is Cooper Mays. I think he's such a good player. So he's really good. He plays an important position. He's a veteran who helps lead that offensive line. And we've seen the challenge Tennessee's offensive line has faced without him when he's missed because of injury. So I'll say Cooper Mays, plus the question of who replaces him. That's a real question mark if he goes out. So offensively, besides Nico, I would say Cooper Mays. I think
take Pearce out on defense too.
Take Pearce out on defense? Okay. I'll say Keenan Pili, because if he's off the field at linebacker, that's a lot of pressure on young, inexperienced players. Plus the position group there has a real depth question with Elijah Herring having transferred out. He would be your second most experienced player. So if you lose your 2 most experienced guys at that position group, that would be a big concern. So offensively, Cooper Mays. Defensively, I would say Keenan Pili.
It's like you and I are on the same wavelength. That's what I said in segment number 1. So there you go. I don't know if that's a compliment or a detriment for you, but that's
we know who it's not now, so everybody else can come up with the right answer. But there's something too straight up the middle of what's happening. The communication, the leadership, all of that matters too, along with playmaking. They have to be good players. If Keenan Pili weren't as good as he's capable of being, Cooper's one of their top all-conference candidates going in, so that factors in too.
Josh, got the holiday coming up on Thursday, but SEC Media Days right around the corner here in a couple of weeks. What's coming up on Josh and Swain in the next couple of days and weeks?
Yeah, nothing's slowing down. We've had so much to talk about with baseball, really starting to dive into football with just a few weeks to go until camp. And we keep everybody updated with the newsletter. Appreciate those who have subscribed. Still encourage you to do so. Once a week, each Friday morning. My writing might be shaky this week. What's different from the other editions, but got a little travel involved with the holidays, but we'll still have something for you this Friday. So you can subscribe at joshandswain.com.
You can also subscribe in the show notes of this episode, wherever you're listening, and, of course, on YouTube as well. Josh, as always, thanks so much for your time.
Thanks, Eric.
Tennessee picks up its first baseball commit via the transfer portal in right-handed pitcher Tanner Franklin. I like this pickup, number 1, because he's got a high-velocity arm, sitting anywhere between 97 to 99 from the right side. But number 2, he is from Jefferson County. Shout out Patriots, Dumpling Valley. He is a Jefferson County native that spent his first couple of seasons in the college realm at Kennesaw State. He has 2 years of eligibility remaining, and he is draft eligible this time next summer in 2025. Tanner Franklin, 6'5", 240 pounds. A guy, again, that's got a high velocity arm. He's got a fastball, he's got a changeup, got a curveball, got a cutter. That's what he's kind of working with in his arsenal right now. And numbers are okay. Nothing to write home about. As a sophomore, 4-1 was the record, a 5.60 ERA over 21 appearances, 1 start this past spring, 27 innings and a third, 43 strikeouts, 27 walks. Opponents were hitting .212 against him, so strikeouts were high, walks were also high, and that's an issue. He was the closer. He logged 5 saves on the season, the back end of that bullpen. As a true freshman, he had an 8.18 ERA over 13 appearances and 11 innings pitched. So he is a work in progress, but you can't coach 97 to 99. Location. Can you locate? Can you get taught that? If you can, man, what a weapon you're going to have at the back end of that bullpen for Tennessee. Nate Snead throws gas. Marcus Phillips throws gas. There's a lot of guys that have high velocity arms, and Tanner Franklin's not going to be added in that mix. So his challenge when getting on campus, whenever they get on campus and working with Frank Anderson, is to harness your control, learn how to locate, and I think he could be a big back into the bullpen piece for Tennessee for the season 2025. So I'm excited about this one. Again, Jefferson County, really enjoy that one. He's a guy that grew up as a Tennessee fan. I had the opportunity to talk with him, prior to his commitment that he made live on Tuesday around noon. Said, quote, it's something I've dreamed of since I was a kid. It still doesn't feel real, but pretty cool opportunity to have on playing at the University of Tennessee. He said he just felt like God was telling him, quote, I just felt like God was telling me my time at Kennesaw State was up and I needed to find a different place. Ended up going to the portal, and Tennessee reached out. Quote, I was like, all right, God, if this is what you want me to do, I'll do it. I'm pretty awesome that it all worked out. When he was at Jefferson County, I guess it would have been the spring of 2022, he won Mr. Tennessee Baseball. He had an ERA of 0.95 and 101 strikeouts, which is just phenomenal. He had a chance to watch Tennessee go and win the College World Series this past month. He said, quote, it was awesome to be a fan, to watch. I was on the phone with some of my friends while watching it. It was awesome to see them finally doing it after going 3 times in 4 years. A really cool experience. Said that he's going to bring, quote, a lot of great energy. I think I'm a pretty motivated guy. I think I can be a big piece in high leverage situations and be a pretty dominant pitcher who can boost the staff overall. And then finally I asked him about Frank Anderson and being able to work with him. And he said, quote, you see every year he brings in people you've never heard of and turns them into draft picks. His reputation is very high. Said he knows a couple of those pitchers that are on the team. Everything they have told me has been amazing. I'm just excited to get up there and to get to work, take that next step, end quote. One of those players that he is close with currently on Tennessee's team is former freshman Dylan Loy. Played some travel ball together, played against each other in high school. And that's a really good resource if you're Tanner Franklin, who, again, commits to Tennessee out of the transfer portal. So the first domino has fallen. We're really Thomas Crabtree, a JUCO commitment prior to when the team left for Omaha. He was added to the mix, but this is the first commitment out of the transfer portal. Right-handed pitcher from Kennesaw State, Jefferson County native, Tanner Franklin, 6'5", 240 pounds. So you look at the big board, or at least the big board, the Caner big board, that all my information on my little notepad here. Gavin Keelan, infielder for Louisville, arguably the best player in the transfer portal. He's still out there. That's a Tennessee, Florida. I think LSU's still in there, but Tennessee, Florida battle as well. He's in the Cape Cod League right now, currently. Miles Patton, left-handed pitcher from Long Beach State. That one's one that Tennessee's still very much in on. Cade Fisher, left-handed pitcher from Florida, had a really good freshman year in 2023, was a freshman All-American. Struggled at times when they tried to make him the Friday night starter, but he's been pretty stellar out of the bullpen. He's pitching in the Cape as well. Mississippi State, Texas, Tennessee, Wake Forest. Those are the teams that are interested right then and there. A couple of Ole Miss players that have been reported to will be going in the transfer portal. But at the time of this recording on a Tuesday afternoon, they still haven't officially been in the portal, but they have been reported to be entering the portal. I say all this phrasing because, if they're not in the portal, I don't want to say Tennessee's talking to them because that's not true. However, I could see Tennessee having interest in Andrew Fisher, third baseman from Ole Miss. Big bat, played at Duke actually in 2023, Ole Miss in 2024 this past spring. I would expect Tennessee to have interest there because they want to get another infield bat. And then his teammate, Liam Doyle, another player who's been reportedly headed to the transfer portal, but at the time of this recording is not in just yet. Liam Doyle, left-handed pitcher for Ole Miss. He went to Ole Miss last year by way of, I believe, Coastal Carolina. Tennessee wants some left-handed pitching because you're set to lose Xander, Kirby, Stamos, some of these other guys. And I think Liam Doyle, simply because they were in on him and tried to get him last year, I think would still have some interest this year if when that becomes official. So I'd like to pay attention to that. Jays Laviolette and Gavin Grahovac went ahead and, as expected, made announcements on Tuesday that they were returning to the 12th man in Texas A&M as that staff went ahead and made Michael Early the official hire earlier in the week. So Tennessee had interest there, but those guys are going back to A&M, and of course there will be more names on the list as the week goes on. I expect Tennessee to have some weekend visitors as well. And then finally, as we conclude this Wednesday edition of Locked On Vols, do want to go and check out the SEC Takeover. This is the slate that's scheduled for Friday, beginning Friday at midnight Eastern Time. The SEC Takeover, 24 hours of Tennessee coverage. It's on Friday for the Volunteers. Going to start at midnight with Tennessee's game against South Carolina. Of course, Tennessee won that game big at home, and you had the pick six and all that. Tennessee, South Carolina is going to be played at midnight. Football, volleyball against Florida is going to begin at 2:30. All these times are Eastern. Tennessee's win over LSU in the SEC Tournament Championship game is going to begin at 4:30. Tennessee men's basketball against Auburn. Whew, what a win that was there towards the end of the regular season. Man, that was just one of many Dalton Connect games. That's going to begin at 7:30 in the morning. At 9:30, they're going to do SEC Inside, Tennessee football. At 10 o'clock in the morning, softball game against Georgia that took place on April the 7th. Noon, it's going to be a replay of the Citrus Bowl, Tennessee and Iowa. 3 o'clock, it's going to be volleyball against Kentucky. 5 o'clock, it's going to be Tennessee against South Carolina basketball that took place on March the 6th. One of those 6 games that was a trying feat there to end the regular season for Rick Barnes' club. 7 o'clock, softball against Kentucky that happened on May 3rd, and then concluding Tennessee's day at the SEC Takeover at 9 o'clock Eastern Time. They will replay Tennessee against Texas A&M Game 3 of the College World Series that took place on June the 24th, where Tennessee won a national championship. I like the slate. I do. We can nitpick all day long. There's a couple other baseball games I like to see on there, but you got to try to get as many sports as you possibly can on there. Good reputation, good baseball games listed. The football-wise, South Carolina was an okay game. And Tennessee didn't have many exciting football games this year, but certainly the Citrus Bowl win needed to be on there, and it is. And, of course, volleyball, what it did, softball. I like the slate. So if you want to watch some Tennessee sports all day long on the SEC Network, Friday, July the 5th, beginning at midnight Eastern Time, that is your one-stop shop for Tennessee athletics over on the SEC Network. All right. Appreciate you guys for being here and making Locked On Vols a part of your morning routine, your first listen, your first watch. Shout out everydayers. When we come back tomorrow, some of the firework moments from this past year of Tennessee athletics. There are so many to choose from. Plus the latest in Tennessee football, recruiting, Tennessee recruiting in the transfer portal for baseball, all that and more coming up on your Thursday edition, your July 4th edition of Locked On Vols. Appreciate you guys as always. This is Locked On Vols.